The great Jackie Redmond of NHL on TNT. Jackie, hopefully you weren't listening like 5 minutes ago, or hopefully you were. We were paying you compliments. You better do what you do. Sue us.
I wasn't. I wish I was.
Did you wear
rude.
that blazer to match our color scheme? Because holy shit.
I didn't, but I am seeing what's happening and I'm into it. It was accidentally on purpose, I guess. I can't take credit, but I brought this with me to the conference final, and then I was like, wait, this is kind of too green. I feel like people are going to think I'm like rooting for the Stars, so I better not wear it. So I saved it for you guys, I guess.
Well, it's not just green. It is the like AI Stars green kind of thing. And that was a horrible thing, but Pete cyberbullied them out of using it.
I did, and it was probably my greatest contribution to the hockey world this season. So the one question that I want to ask you straight off the top is, how are you like alive? You do more than anybody else in the media. Like, are you just built different, or do you sometimes wish that you did less?
I'm definitely not built different, though. Edzo and the boys at TNT joke that I have like an evil twin that does all of the WWE stuff, and I just like haven't let that information out. I think sometimes I'm like, I might be like a lot better at my job if I didn't have so many of them. But it's the life I chose. I love it. I love hockey so much, and I have always liked wrestling. And now that I cover WWE and I'm around it like front row seat, I'm pretty obsessed. So I don't know how I could give up either thing, So, my cross to bear, no sleep.
The wrestling thing, though, has to make you better at because like you don't just have a job broadcasting hockey. You have the hardest job broadcasting hockey. And I'm not just saying that. You are dealing with people at the time they least want to talk to somebody, which is right before they go on the ice, in the middle of a game or whatever. And I would imagine the fact that in your other job, you're dealing with people who are at times like yelling at you, that you go into that being like, you know what, we're all just people. Let's have a conversation. And a lot of the like, fuck, this could be awkward thing goes away.
Yeah, I think the one thing I've learned doing the bench interviews with coaches, and the worst interview in hockey is the arrival interview. I think it's worse than the bench interview with the coach, because at least with the coach, like, if you ask about the game that's happening in front of them, like, they have a million thoughts on that. So I think as long as you give them something, then they're usually pretty good. But the arrival interviews with the players is the true bane of my existence, because they don't want to do them. It's a couple of hours before puck drop, and traditionally they are very like business, what do you guys got to do to have a better power play? And they're just so boring at times. I hate saying that, because if they ever went away, maybe I'd be out of a job. But I think that I've learned that I just have to do it in my style, in my way, and either I'm going to get something or I'm not, but at least I'm trying, if that makes sense. So I don't know how I got there, but I did. And with the wrestling, it's like, I feel like the biggest thing I've learned with WWE is never to waste any moment, like there should be value in every single thing that you do. There are no throwaways. Every second counts for something. And so I try, I don't always succeed, to make my interviews within the hockey game, before the game, after the game. I try to make them valuable in some way, for the viewers. Again, I don't always succeed, but I do think that my mentality and how I approach them has definitely changed, because I know I'm rambling a little bit, but I think a couple of years ago, those arrival interviews specifically, I almost, not that I stopped trying, but I just kind of was like, all right, just ask them about whatever, the storyline is going into the game, and like, you're going to get what you're going to get. And now I'm much more willing to kind of try something different and fall on my face if I have to, because if you get something, it's so worth it,
Oh yeah, and I mean that's like part of why you're so good at. I forget what series it was, but like you, instead of kind of doing the hey, how do you have to do this or like whatever, you would notice something, and I think that the hardest thing to get used to doing as like an interviewer is to just like listen to what the other person is saying, or like keep an eye on your surroundings, because while there could always be hey, how are you going to beat this goaltender sort of question, something might pop up that ends up being 100 times more interesting. And it's just like a little bit unique.
Yeah, it was just like an observation you made on the bench, like right before the interview. And you asked.
I think it was when Pasta scored. I think it was Pasta had finally scored, and Monty and him were having a moment. And I was like, what did you just say to him? Like, what just happened? I think is that what you guys talking about?
Yeah.
Yes,
and,
that was
and
exactly
right there,
it.
And right there, they could be like, you know what we say to each other is nobody else's business or whatever, and they could have shut you down. But instead we get an interesting kind of anecdote. So yeah, that's like the honestly, I think that can be the hardest thing of like just interviewing people is remembering that you're actually in a moment and that things are going on, because if you just keep your eyes peeled and listen, you might end up getting a lot better things than just like the notes that you might have had 10 minutes before.
The NHL, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go. I was just agreeing.
The NHL and the WWE seem like very different worlds to live in. Is there anything that like you wish would carry over into the other world, whether it's the NHL to WWE or vice versa?
I'm so glad you asked this question. I think the first thing that I wish would carry over is, and not all hockey players are like this. I do think we have in some ways gotten better, and there are certain guys that understand that the media can be a tool that they can use to their advantage. But I do wish more hockey players looked at their interview opportunities like wrestlers do for their promos. Because if you think about it, like it's such an opportunity to present yourself in the way that you want to be perceived. If you take the time to kind of step back and go, okay, I have this 2-minute thing with Jackie, after morning skate that's going to air on, NHL Network or BR Open Ice or whatever it is. Like I could just approach it as like PR, like cut and paste answers, or I could be like, you know what? I feel like people look at me like I'm boring or I'm too serious or I'm pissy all the time or whatever it might be. And you can be like, this is an opportunity for me to show them that I'm not that. I could just be whatever, and I think if more athletes in general kind of took that approach, I think they could really benefit themselves. I mean, obviously I'm biased because it would help me too. I'd have better interviews, but I think for them, if they looked at it as like the Miz in WWE wastes 0 seconds on television. Doesn't matter if he's on Monday Night Raw or the after show on Peacock, which gets obviously less viewership than Raw, or doing a digital, he approaches everything like it's the biggest spot he's getting that night. And I think that's why he's been around as long as he has. So that's one thing. And then I think some of the chants and some of the crowd involvement from WWE would be fun at the NHL level. We get it sometimes, but if we got it more, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to that.
Your perspective on this Cup Final is probably unique and rare for a lot of people, because you just covered the Western Conference Final, which was the Oilers, and you were also there last year for the Stanley Cup Final, and you had like the walk-off interview with Paul Maurice, which I know that Paul Maurice has been Johnny Jokemaker this postseason, but that can't be easy to talk to a coach right after and have to do talk about dreaded interviews. So you just lost the Stanley Cup Final.
Your life is ruined.
How you doing, loser? So like you've been as close to both of these teams as anyone can be. What's your experience been with each of these teams?
On that interview, I'll just say like huge kudos to Paul for even doing it. I actually 5 minutes before, if that was not planned going into that game, like, hey, Vegas wins, we're going to interview Paul Maurice after. Like that was I was on the ice interviewing Golden Knights, and my producer, Brownie, shout out to Brownie, got in my ear and was like, hey, they want you to go interview Paul Maurice in the hallway. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're taking me off the ice where the interviews are the most fun because they just won. And Phil Kessel's telling me he hopes he doesn't puke tonight. And now I'm going to go out there or back there and be serious and be like, so Paul, that thing you've dreamed of your entire life just slipped away. It's closest, you've ever been. How does it feel? So I'm so glad I did it though, because I told them, I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this. And I went and did it, and it ended up being probably one of the things I'm most proud of from last year, if not the thing I'm most proud of. But in terms of Florida and Edmonton, I think covering Florida for a few games leading up to this final, I'm not in the conference final, obviously, but the first 2 rounds, They are different. They keep saying that and they keep giving that message, but I do think they are a different team that has grown from their experiences last year. And I do think that experience matters. I know that sounds super cliche, but that pain of defeat, I think, has made them stronger. And I think they are different in the way that they play as well. There are certainly similarities, but one thing I think Paul Maurice really drove home for me in talking to him, I think it was in the second round when they were playing Boston, a series with so much hatred and physicality and hitting, but not a lot of penalties for the Panthers. And he said, last year we had to mix it up because we felt like that gave us our best chance to win. We kind of had to like stir the pot and make things crazy and chaotic. And this year, he said, we don't have to do that. We have a different personality to our group. We are not necessarily the same team that went to the final last year, and we don't have to get involved in that stuff. So he said, one of my favorite lines that I never got to use on the broadcast because I didn't get the hit in was, we're not looking to start any fires. We're not going to walk away from any fires, but we're not arsonists anymore. We're not like taking the match and lighting things up. And I think that's true when you watch how they play and you watch specifically in that Bruins series when things did get physical and got a little crazy, their guys were kind of, okay, like mucking up a little bit, but then skate away. And so I do think that they're different. That's probably the biggest thing with them. And then with Edmonton, when they went down 2-0 in game 4, I was like, all right, Dallas, this is over. I think we all thought that. And whatever they tapped into in that game has changed everything. It's changed my entire perception of them as a team. When the playoffs started, everyone that loves hockey at WWE came out of the woodwork. I had been doing this role for like 8 months, and maybe there was 3 people that talked to me about hockey. Playoffs start, all the Bruins fans come out of the woodwork to make fun of me because I'm a Leafs fan. And, I told them all, they're all like, what do you think? Dallas, Edmonton, Dallas, Edmonton. I was like, Dallas is going to dust the Oilers. It's over in 5. Like, I really believe that. But I think they found something. I think they found that intangible belief within their group that they can actually overcome anything, and they don't have to necessarily, not that you ever intend to fold, but I think we've seen that with Edmonton in the past. I think that they've unlocked like a new level of the game in terms of their mental strength, I think, which makes them scary when you have the best player in the world also on your squad.
You're a Canadian person, famously. There's been discourse as to whether Canada's rooting for the Oilers, and a lot of people say like, oh, well, they'll want McDavid to win, and we're getting a lot of Canadian people saying, I am not rooting. I'm a whatever fan. I would not root for the Oilers. You, as a Canadian person and citizen of the earth, are you rooting for the Oilers in the Cup Final?
I have no rooting interest. No, I'm just kidding. But my husband and I, this is like one of our number one fights that we get in every single year. We don't argue a lot, but this we fight about all the time because my husband claims he is a Maple Leafs fan. However, he also, not even just in the playoffs, through the regular season, he's like upset when the Oilers lose, upset when the Canucks lose. I'm like, well, you're cheering for all the teams. And he's like, well, I'm Canadian. And I was like, no, you're a phony is what you are. You tell me you're a Leafs fan. You're not a real Leafs fan. You can't be living and dying by the Edmonton Oilers at 1:00 in the morning because we live in Nova Scotia and the game starts at 11 because the Oilers are losing to, Columbus on a Tuesday in January. Like, you're not a Leafs fan. This is BS. So to answer your question, my husband will be rooting for the Oilers. I, however, I'm really more so rooting for a great series. I know that sounds so lame, but it's true. I think it'd be great to see Connor McDavid win. If I'm rooting for the Oilers in any way, it's not because I'm Canadian. It's just because I think it's good for the game to see the best player in the world win a championship. Because I don't care how good you are or what you accomplish in your career. If you don't win, you're never talked about the same. It's always like this thing that's attached to you that
Which
you didn't
is so
win.
annoying, but it's fucking true. I saw a thing today that was like, does McDavid need a cup to be, it's BR, which like we love there, but it was like, does McDavid need a cup to be considered one of the greats? And it just broke my heart because I'm like, McDavid is the greatest ever.
But
people are going to talk about,
he's also 27.
Yeah.
And by the way,
I know.
And by the way, like, I like your husband's vibe.
I was going to say, yeah, next time you can grab him just for a few minutes. I'm an oil man, so
wait. I can't stand for you pumping my husband's tires. He will love this way too much because I'm always like, no, I'm the hockey professional in this family. And I'm telling you, you can't just root for all the Canadian teams. You can't do that. I'm like, it's not right. And now you guys are supporting him.
Gatekeeping hockey person.
Yeah. Jackie Redmond,
You've truly reached the top of the hockey landscape. You're telling people what they can and can't do.
My husband. I'm telling my husband what he can and can't do.
That's just a healthy relationship. So
right.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
for sure. What do you think about the media potential, like the soundbite potential from this matchup? Because you got Matthew Tkachuk, who never turns away a microphone, and thank God. But you've also got like pissy Leon Draisaitl potential. You got Paul Maurice. Like, what's your read on how this might go soundbite wise?
Well, the Florida Panthers are going to dominate the media game in terms of sound bites that we love, right? And I think there's a chance here for Edmonton where it's going to make them look even drier than they already are because it's going to be contrasted with the Florida Panthers and Paul Maurice and Matthew Tkachuk. I wish Leon Draisaitl did more media. I know he's not crazy about it, but when he does it, he's so good. Like, he always gives you something when you talk to him. It's just that he doesn't always talk to you. So I really like, and Connor McDavid has gotten better. I do give him credit. Like, when things happen, he is a little more honest, I think, and forthright with his actual opinion on them. But I just think it's almost like, I feel like the Oilers got to dig deep and find that personality and show it a little bit more, because when it goes up against the Florida Panthers, who have personality even in defeat, I don't know. It's going to be interesting, though.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Did we want to get into the 10 best players?
We're going to do our top 10 players.
Right, yes.
It's a trite kind of cliche thing that we would do in TV, but I would always love doing it. It's
fun.
It's so fun just coming up with your list of favorite players in the series, best players in the series, or whatever. We did it last round with Butchie. There was a lot of good reaction. Pete, give us your top 10 players in the Stanley Cup Final.
My top 10 players, I'm going to start with number 10, Sergei Bobrovsky, Carter Verhaeghe, Evan Bouchard, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Zachary Hyman, Gus Forsling, Matthew Tkachuk, Leon Draisaitl, Alexander Barkov, Connor McDavid. I know that I was kind of
upset off the bat.
Going to blow your mind. I don't know if I ever would have made this list without Connor and Leon as number 1 and 2. But I'll tell you what, I think that I would take Barkov over Draisaitl, especially in a playoff hockey series.
Wow. I mean, Barkov has been, if there's two players who are being finally like properly appreciated, well, it's Barkov being properly appreciated, and then Forsling, I think, who is just like broken out. But two guys that are getting way more discussion than they would in years past. He's been, what's Barkov like to cover?
Oh my gosh. So Barkov is one of these players to me, working at NHL Network and covering the entire league, where there was a long time where we called him underrated. Then he was underappreciated because he was properly rated, but we still weren't really talking about him as much as we should be. But even this year, I mean, I covered the Panthers last year in the conference final and the final. Even this year, coming back and doing a few games covering the Panthers, I've still stood back and I was like, man, when you watch these games live in person, where you can watch everything that's happening on the ice, not just what's on the screen, you just really stand back and are in awe of him. He is so good. I actually contemplated, we haven't got to my list yet, but I was very torn about where to put Barkov on my list. We'll see when we get to it. But yeah, he's unbelievable. And I don't know what, the Panthers without him drop down so much in my book.
He's on the perfect player list, which doesn't mean necessarily best player, but a lot of these guys are retired, but it was always Datsuk, Hossa, Bergeron, Kopitar, maybe not quite, but perfect offensive
He can
player.
change the entire DNA of a series on both ends of the ice.
Yeah.
And that's to me why I put him above Draisaitl. Draisaitl, incredible offensive guy, better than Barkov probably, but just lacks it on the defensive end.
Okay, now last round, Pete, you and I did we, Sean, have the exact same players?
Exact same
Correct?
players.
Exact same players, different order. Sean, throw up my list. Let's see. I got McDavid 1, Draisaitl 2, so not as interesting as Pete. Barkov, Forsling I got as the 4th best player in this series, which if you were to tell me going into the playoffs that I would have Gus Forsling as the 4th best player in the Stanley Cup Final, I'd be very confused. Kachuk, Hyman, Bouchard, Verhaeghe, Sam Reinhart, Matthias Ekholm. Did I have anybody that you didn't have?
Yeah, you have Matthias Ekholm and Sam Reinhart.
Okay,
Sam
so
Reinhart,
I don't have Barkov on my top 10 list. And let's just get to Jackie's.
Yeah, you do.
I'm sorry, I meant
was gonna
Bobrovsky.
say, you
Wrong B.
better
Wrong
Oh, I was like, wait, what?
No,
I was
my bad.
about to lose it.
Wrong B. We would have been disqualified. I don't have Bobrovsky on my top 10 list. And if we get to Jackie's, Jackie doesn't either.
No, I don't, and I can't remember my whole list, so I'm trying to see here. But I just eliminated the goalies right away because I was like, you know what? Like, obviously, both goaltenders are super important. One is better than the other. Obviously, I was just eliminated them from my list from the jump. I was like, I'm not including them. They're a different conversation. But I had a mix of similar players to you guys. I debated moving Barkov into the 2 spot, and I ended up putting him in the 3 spot. And then the ones that I found super interesting for me were the defensemen. Like, where do I put them, right? Like, because Bouchard is having such a historic run offensively as a defenseman. And I think that matters in this series. I think it carries a lot of weight. I think a lot of what the Oilers do and a lot of their offense at times comes off of that Bouch bomb, which always hits the net. As somebody who just can't stand when defensemen miss the net, Bouchard usually hits. And so for me, it's like that matters because like then there's a rebound and people can, whatever. I'm getting into a whole rant for a different day. So I really was torn about Forsling and Bouchard and where to place them on the list. And then I love Verhaeghe, like Captain Clutch, like in a Stanley Cup Final in a tight game, like he's coming through. So I had to have him on the list. I was upset that I couldn't get Reinhart on there, and I started playing this game of like, how many Oilers do I have and how many Panthers do I have? And the other one was Nugent Hopkins. Like, I think he might be the most underhyped first overall pick currently in the NHL. Maybe.
Hell yes.
I don't know. Like, is he number 1 on that list? He's so freaking good. And like Leon Draisaitl put it perfectly, so I'll quote him, like, there's not a part of our game that he doesn't touch. He is involved in everything, and he's not just involved in everything. Like, there's a lot of players in the league, not a lot, but there's a chunk of players in the league that play on the PK and the power play, but he does both so well, and then is a lead at 5-on-5 too. I just cannot say enough about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. So I did debate moving him higher on my list as well. But yeah, that's what I got. What do you guys think?
My biggest takeaway from these 3 lists is it is a crazy testament to how much talent there is in the NHL right now that a guy with 57 goals during the regular season did not make 2 of our 3 top 10 lists in a series between 2 teams.
Was I the only one with Reinhart?
Fucking crazy, yeah.
Yes,
and I put it on there because like I was like, am I going to leave off Carter Verhaeghe? No, I can't.
Right.
Because you have to make
that was the debate that I had. It was the same thing. I was like, Verhaeghe, Reinhart. Like, where do I go? And I think I put Ekholm on my list, right?
Yes.
I did have Ekholm on there. I just feel like for Edmonton in this series specifically, like it matters so much. Like if it was Florida and if it was Edmonton and a different team, or Florida and not the Oilers, obviously he wouldn't be on there. But I just think in the context of this, I think he really matters.
Yeah, that's how I feel. Like, he is a top 10 most important player in this series.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say he's a top 10 best.
I said earlier in the week, like, Florida has taken players out throughout the postseason, and you can decide for yourself whether it's been intentional or what. I don't think they're stupid enough to go after McDavid and Draisaitl, because if either of those things happen, then like the NHL will just wage a war against Florida. But if they were to take out, I don't want them to do this, but like Ekholm is the guy where if Matthias Ekholm gets hurt or gets sick or anything and misses time, like that is what ends it for Edmonton. And that is what scares me so much because he really is an invaluable piece. Evan Bouchard has been a godsend as an offensive defenseman, but he needs to be with an adult.
Yeah.
And Ekholm's been amazing. So like I think we all see eye to eye on his importance to the series. I love that you gave that explanation for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, though, because he should be in somebody's top 10. It breaks my heart that he wasn't in mine. You're right. He just touches everything that they do.
Yeah, and I also love that he was a 100-point player last year and decided, not for me. I'm just going to be an incredible, like, Selke-worthy forward. So, like, he's got every part of his game.
Yeah, and he's also, like, just for such an elite player, and again, like a first overall pick, to be able to be the guy on a team full of stars that's like, you know what, like I'm gonna not necessarily alter my game, but like I don't need to be the guy in the spotlight. I don't have to be number one, the number one player talked about on this team. Like I can have a really impactful role in multiple ways and help this team win. I just think there's a lot of guys, because they've had the spotlight their whole life, it's not so easy to give it up, you know? It's not so easy to be like, okay, I'm going to be this PK guy. I'm going to have a solid defensive game. I'm going to be maybe different than what I thought I was going to be when I came into the league in some ways. So I give him a lot of credit for that too, because I don't think that it's necessarily, I think as fans, we're always just like, oh, I don't have so much ego. Like, why can't you, play differently? And it's like, well, because I've been playing this way for like 25 years. So like,
probably
this is who I am.
It's probably a little bit easier when you're sharing a room with Connor McDavid. You're like, fuck, that guy's so good. I'm not him.
Yeah, I'm not going to be.
Yeah, true. Yeah, 100%. But, I do think he deserves a lot more credit. And he's starting to get it. But even still, I would say, I think the best way to describe it is he's just the most underhyped first overall pick in the league. So, anyways.
No, I'll tell you what. We're going to clip you discussing Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. We're going to post it on Instagram with like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins underappreciated. And it's going to do well. It's like, everyone's going to be like, yes, my God, he is. And Oilers fans are going to be like, we're seeing.
Stu Skinner's going to comment on it and be like, I fucking love that guy. That was my favorite moment of the Western Conference wrap-up pressers. Just like Stu being like, he was my favorite player growing up. It's very cool that I get to be friends with him.
Yeah, but before we ask you your pick for the series, I do quickly want to ask, Stu Skinner at the end of that series, I kept thinking of it as like, he's back. Stu's back. Stu's back. Do you think that Stuart Skinner was back or that he reached a new plane?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Like, is he in a zone that you haven't seen from him before?
I'm going to say that I think he tapped into something that the whole team did, and it's sort of like bleeding throughout them. Like, I know that they dug themselves out of their start at the beginning of the regular season. So yes, like they've already gone through some adversity or whatever. But I think that he tapped into something new because there's just an air about him. And again, it's not like I've covered every single Oilers game this year, not even close, but I did do, I think 5 or 6 of them during the regular season. And there's just like a vibe around Stuart Skinner where he seems he just seems so comfortable. You know what I mean? And like when you're comfortable playing that way and with the stakes so high and having been pulled and been this and been that, like, I just think that makes you dangerous. So I'm going to say that he's tapped into something, but I think the whole team has ever since game 4. But I like to buy into those things. So I should maybe
that team is
throw
being
that
powered
out
by
there.
friendship. That's true. It's 100% true.
And they're so tight. Like we say this all, like it's hard to really like make this point all the time, but like every team says that they're close. But I talked to Corey Perry before game 6, like in the morning, and I was like, listen, like you've been in a million cup finals in the last 5 years. Like you've been around a lot of championship caliber teams, not necessarily teams that won while you were there, but that have championship pedigree. What about this group is similar to that or reminds you of certain characteristics of some of the cup worthy teams that you've been on? And his first thing was like, obviously, McDavid and Draisaitl are out of this world and there's some elite talent here. But he said it really is a really close room. Like, I had no idea how tight everyone in here is. Like, these guys are legitimately best friends. They care about each other, and you have to. He's like, I've never gone deep with a team where there was any outsiders or cliques, or like the guys that had been there the longest were tight, and then other guys that had come along or been picked up at the deadline or whatever maybe weren't necessarily as close. He was like, this is truly a brotherhood in here, and they trust each other. He's like, when you are that close, what happens is that you have trust. So when things don't go well, or you have a bad game or a bad period, as we saw in the conference final, you're not turning on each other. Like, we're in it together, and we're able to hold each other accountable. Like any good relationship, right? You're going to disagree about things, and you're going to have fights because you're honest with each other and you respect each other enough to have those conversations. And so when Corey Perry painted that picture, I was like, okay, maybe this team is different. Like, it sounds like it is. And I don't think that he was blowing smoke. I think he was being very honest. We weren't on camera. It wasn't an interview that we taped. It was, for people watching that maybe don't know this, like, when you're a reporter in a game, not everything you do is filmed for the broadcast. Sometimes you're like, listen, I want to do a hit on Corey Perry. Can I have 5 minutes off camera with him after the morning skate? And then you get some of your intel that way. It was one of those. So, like, I don't think he was saying it for the camera. I think he was being really honest, and he knows what it takes to win and to just like get to this point, I guess.
Who do you have winning the series?
Okay, I have Florida winning the series because I came into the playoffs feeling like they could win, and I didn't necessarily have a lot of confidence in the Oilers. So I'm going with the Florida Panthers, but I think it's going to be a long series, and if they take penalties, like, Edmonton could really flip everything on its head. But I got Florida. Who do you guys have?
I mean, I'm an Oil man. I'm extremely. If you see the jerseys, we're supposed to have a mix of jerseys. I've just slowly only put Oilers stuff behind me. So
tell me this. What about the Oilers makes you think that they will beat the Panthers that isn't just like, well, French. Okay, you take my thing.
No, I truly think, and we're going to have Steve, the great Steve Peters, longtime video coach of the Coyotes, on to do X's and O's stuff with us after this. But I truly think that the things that Florida has used to beat so many other teams makes the Oilers like kind of a good foil for them, because they're so aggressive and relentless with like keeping the puck in the offensive zone and like stepping up at the offensive blue line, that they let the puck go the other way and they let guys get behind them. And it's not going to be Pavel Zacha getting behind them. It's going to be Connor McDavid getting behind them. And like that, the things that they allow are the things that the Oilers, if they go back to kind of being the old Oilers, not the defensively stout Oilers, but like the crazy ass cocaine Oilers, they can take advantage of that. But we'll see. Like, the Panthers have made every team look bad. And I'm hopeful that the way they match up can make the Oilers look good, but we haven't seen any team really take advantage against them yet.
Yeah.
We all silly like the mayor.